Hi, I'm Michael with the Bell Studio, and the title of this video is How Music Lessons Work. Now, you might think, well, that's a pretty simplistic topic to do a video on, but the reason I found this video is necessary is that I find a lot of students have very vague ideas of what is expected of them when it comes to learning a new instrument. So let's say you've decided to learn a new instrument, you've made an appointment for your first lesson, and you show up for your first lesson. What's going to happen? Now, the first lesson, and maybe even part of the second lesson, is going to be a little different. Um, the first lesson, I'll spend a lot of time getting to know you, asking you what your background is, maybe your past musical experience, maybe it's none, or maybe it's a little, uh, what your interests are, and and most of all, what your goal is for learning this new instrument. Whether it's to just have some fun or play in a band or maybe on your church worship team, or if in fact you want to become a world-class concert pianist. There's different approaches to teaching all of these different things. And so my job is to get to know you enough that I can teach you in the way that you learn best and help you reach your goals. So after getting to know you a bit, I'll spend the rest of the time introducing you to uh, some basics of the instrument you want to learn. It'll involve some playing, maybe the first lesson, a lot of listening. But by the end of the lesson, you'll have something that you can go home and spend some time thinking about, reviewing, maybe even playing a little bit. So by the second lesson, most definitely the third lesson, we'll be getting into more of a routine that I'll go through now. So to do this properly, I need to start, let's say, halfway through a lesson. Okay, so let's say your lesson is at 3:30 on Wednesdays. Okay, so somewhere around 3:45, we'll be turning the page. Okay, if we're using a book, we'll turn the page, and I will begin to introduce you to a new concept, a new note, or a new rhythm, or a new technique, and I'll explain that concept to you, maybe in two or three different ways, however you understand it best, and I'll obviously ask questions, make sure you understand it, and then most likely the reason that I'm introducing this new concept is because it's going to be used in the piece that's in the book right in front of you. So I'll have you start playing a little of this piece. Now, of course, you're going to probably kind of fumble through it the first time, and that's totally expected. But I'll point out the new spots. I'll point out any tricky spots. Give you some heads up about certain things, and you might not make it all the way through, but by the time we finish, you'll have enough to be able to figure it out at home. So let's say we turn the page again, and maybe the next two or three pieces are working on the same concept. We'll do the same thing. We'll kind of read through a bit of it, point out anything that might be slightly new or unexpected. And so then by the end of the lesson, you will have, you might have anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5 pieces that you need to work on at home. And I will either give you a list of what you're expected to practice that week, or in the case of a book, I'll write the date at the top of each piece, and you'll know what it is here to practice. So 4 o'clock rolls around, it's time to go home. That's when your part really, really kicks in. So your part, when you get home, is called what we call practice. Okay. Now my next video is going to go into great detail about proper practice techniques and how to get the most out of your practice time and stuff like that. But for right now, I'll just say that my recommendation is a minimum of a half an hour a day of practice for at least 5 days a week. And so So let's say you go home and you practice. And by the way, I am available for answering questions during the week. If you need to send me an email or a text or whatever, I'm always available because I don't want you not practicing just because you don't understand it. So um, so let's say Wednesday rolls around and you've practiced every day except for, let's say, Sunday. Um, and and it's time for your lesson. Okay, what do I expect at your next lesson? My expectation of you at that point is that you show up at the studio promptly at 3:30 with all your required materials, books and whatever else I've given you, and be ready to play all of your assigned pieces as close to perfect as possible. Of course, some days you're going to stumble a bit more than others. Some days you'll have to admit that, yeah, I just ran out of time, or I even forgot, to to practice this piece. Um, and But hopefully, once in a while, it'll be a case of giving you a high five and saying how awesome that was. So, um, I'll listen to you play. I'll critique your playing. I might have to do some stuff, some corrections along the way. Hopefully, though, that you can make it through the piece without me interrupting, and then I can go over what you've done, give you suggestions for better performance, pointing out sections that need work, maybe uh, yeah. So um, so then we get to the end of your assigned pieces. We turn the page, we do it all over again. We introduce you to the next new concept, run through a few lines of whatever the pieces are, point out things that you should be looking out for the next week, and then send you home to practice all over again, to come back the next Wednesday at 3:30 to play all your pieces as close to perfect as possible. So this has been a brief summary of how the typical music lesson works. Hopefully there's more fun involved in my description of it now. I do try to make it as fun as possible. So yeah, that's it, and I'm looking forward to teaching you. Thanks a lot.